My name is Mackenzie Reynolds, and at 29, I never expected to fight for my family's company from a hotel room 6,000 miles away. As CFO of Reynolds Technologies, I was in Tokyo to secure a $4.2 million contract when I got the call about my grandfather's heart attack. Something felt wrong immediately, my mother's voice too controlled, her demands too specific. What I didn't know then was how far she'd go to steal everything my grandfather built. Before I tell you how my own mother tried to sabotage everything I'd worked for, drop a comment letting me know if you've ever had family betray your trust. Hit subscribe if you want to hear how I managed to save both my grandfather's legacy and my career in less than 48 hours. Reynolds Technologies wasn't just a company to me, it was my heritage and future rolled into one. My grandfather Harold Reynolds started the business in his garage 35 years ago, developing custom software solutions when most people were still figuring out how to use their first personal computers. By the time I was born, Reynolds Tech had become a respected mid-sized firm specializing in security software, with offices in 3 states and a growing international client base. My relationship with Grandpa Harold was special from the beginning. My father left when I was 4, leaving my mother Amanda to raise me alone. We moved into Grandpa's guest house, where I grew up watching him work, fascinated by the business conversations happening around me. While my mother cycled through retail jobs and get-rich-quick schemes, Grandpa showed me stability and purpose. Mackenzie has the Reynolds business sense. He'd tell anyone who would listen. Amanda got her mother's artistic temperament. This was his kind way of acknowledging that my mother had never demonstrated any financial responsibility. When I was 12, she took out a loan against Grandpa's house without his knowledge to fund a friend's guaranteed success jewelry business. When I was 16, she convinced Grandpa to invest in her boyfriend's restaurant, which closed 6 months later. By the time I was in college, Grandpa had stopped giving her money altogether, instead paying my tuition directly to the university. I majored in finance with a minor in computer science, spending every summer interning at Reynolds Tech. After graduation, I started in accounts receivable, determined to work my way up without special treatment. I slept at the office during big projects, taught myself Japanese to help with our Asian market expansion, and eventually earned my MBA at night while working full-time. I want people to know I earned my place, I told Grandpa when he offered to make me director of finance after just 3 years. They'll know, he assured me. Your work speaks for itself. By 27, I had become the company's youngest ever CFO, overseeing a team of 20 financial professionals and managing our $30 million annual budget. The board approved my appointment unanimously, everyone except my mother, who had managed to secure herself a non-executive board position by convincing Grandpa it would give her financial stability. She's still my daughter, Grandpa explained apologetically after telling me about her appointment. But don't worry, she has no real power. It's a courtesy title with a small stipend. As Grandpa approached his 75th birthday, succession planning became a frequent topic at family dinners. Though he remained sharp and engaged as CEO, he admitted he couldn't lead the company forever. I'm thinking of stepping back to chairman in the next year or 2, he told me one evening as we reviewed quarterly projections. The board and I agree you're ready for more responsibility, Mackenzie. The conversation was interrupted by my mother bursting into the study, her face flushed with either excitement or alcohol. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. Daddy, I've been thinking about the company's future too, she announced, ignoring me completely. I've been on the board for 2 years now. I think it's time I took a more active role in management. Grandpa exchanged a look with me before responding carefully. Amanda, you've never shown interest in day-to-day operations before. That's because you've never given me the chance, she countered, her voice taking on that wounded tone I knew so well. You gave Mackenzie opportunities from the beginning. She's had years to learn the business. Mackenzie created her own opportunities, Grandpa corrected gently. She's earned every promotion. She's your favorite. Always has been. My mother's eyes narrowed as she looked at me. But I'm your daughter. This company should be my inheritance. The company isn't anyone's inheritance, Grandpa said firmly. It belongs to the shareholders, and it will be led by whoever is most qualified. This exchange became increasingly common in the months that followed. As Grandpa began delegating more responsibilities to me, my mother's resentment grew more obvious. She started showing up at executive meetings she wasn't invited to, questioning financial decisions in ways that betrayed her lack of understanding, and lobbying other board members about her vision for the company's future. The Tanaka Corporation opportunity came at the perfect time. The Japanese tech giant was looking for a security software partner for their new line of smart home devices, and their requirements aligned perfectly with our latest innovations. Securing their business would mean not just the immediate $4.2 million contract, but potential annual renewals and expansion into the massive Asian consumer market. This could transform our company, Grandpa said when we first discussed the opportunity. Mackenzie, I want you to lead this one personally. Your Japanese language skills and financial expertise make you perfect for these negotiations. My mother was livid when she learned I would be traveling to Tokyo instead of her. I'm a board member, she protested during our pre-trip briefing. I should be there representing the company. Mackenzie is CFO and has been working with the team on this proposal for months, Grandpa replied firmly. The Tanaka executives specifically requested her presence after their preliminary meetings. I spent weeks preparing for the Tokyo trip, working with our engineering team to understand every technical detail of our offering, analyzing Tanaka's financial statements to identify their pain points, and rehearsing my presentation until I could deliver it in flawless Japanese or English. The night before my departure, Grandpa invited me to dinner at his house. He presented me with a small wooden box containing his lucky fountain pen. My father gave me this when I signed my first major contract, he explained. I've used it for every important deal since. Now it's yours. Are you sure? I asked, touched by the gesture. Absolutely. He squeezed my hand. Mackenzie, I couldn't be prouder of the executive you've become. Whatever happens with Tanaka, know that I trust you completely with this company's future. As I packed that night, I had no way of knowing how soon that trust would be tested. Or that the greatest threat to our company wouldn't come from market competitors or failed negotiations, but from within our own family. The 13-hour flight to Tokyo gave me time to review my presentation materials one last time before drifting into an uneasy sleep. I woke as we began our descent, watching the sprawling metropolis come into view, an intricate pattern of lights against the darkness that reminded me of circuit boards. My hotel was in Shibuya, just 15 minutes from Tanaka Corporation's headquarters. After a quick shower to wash away the travel fatigue, I reviewed my schedule, a preliminary meeting with their CFO Hiroshi Yamamoto that afternoon, followed by 2 days of technical discussions with their engineering team, and finally the formal presentation to their executive board. The lobby of Tanaka Tower was intimidating in its understated elegance, all clean lines and muted colors, with a massive stone water feature creating a gentle background soundtrack. I adjusted my conservative navy suit, grateful for the hours I'd spent researching Japanese business etiquette. Reynolds-san, welcome to Tanaka Corporation. Hiroshi Yamamoto greeted me with a formal bow, which I returned with careful precision. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal, I replied in Japanese, earning a surprised smile. Your language skills are impressive, he commented, switching to English. It will make our discussions much more productive. The initial meeting went better than I'd hoped. Mr. Yamamoto was thorough in his questions about our company's financial stability and growth projections, but I was prepared with detailed analyses and transparent answers that seemed to satisfy him. Many American companies come to us with flashy presentations, but little substance, he remarked as we concluded. You have brought substance. This is appreciated. The following day brought the technical challenge. Convincing Tanaka's engineering team that our security solutions were robust enough for their consumer products. Their lead engineer, Akiko Nakamura, was particularly skeptical. Your systems have been tested in business environments, she pointed out during our second hour of discussion. Consumer applications present different challenges. Households have multiple users with varying levels of technical proficiency. That's precisely why we developed our adaptive interface, I explained, pulling up the demonstration our team had prepared. The system recognizes user patterns and adjusts security protocols accordingly, without compromising the core protection. By the end of the day, I had won over most of the technical team, with Akiko moving from skeptical to cautiously optimistic. That night, I sent a quick update email to Grandpa and our executive team, careful not to sound overconfident but sharing the positive progress. The third day brought meetings with Tanaka's marketing department and legal team, discussing implementation timelines and contract terms. I navigated the complex negotiations with careful attention to both the explicit terms and the cultural nuances underlying them. You understand that in Japan, the relationship between companies is as important as the contract itself, observed their legal director during a tea break. Reynolds Technologies values long-term partnerships over short-term gains, I assured him. My grandfather built our company on that principle, and we maintain it today. By the evening before my final presentation, I had addressed every concern raised by the various departments and incorporated their feedback into my proposal. I worked until midnight in my hotel room, adjusting figures and refining my slides, then rehearsed the entire presentation twice before finally allowing myself to sleep. The next morning, I dressed in my most conservative suit, applied minimal makeup, and secured my hair in a neat bun. Grandpa's fountain pen went into my inside jacket pocket, a talisman connecting me to the company's history as I worked to secure its future. Tanaka's boardroom was intimidating, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Tokyo, dominated by a massive table of polished dark wood. 14 executives in identical black suits watched impassively as I set up my presentation. "Reynolds-san, you may begin," said CEO Toshiro Tanaka after the formal introductions were complete. I launched into my carefully prepared presentation, moving seamlessly between English and Japanese as I outlined our proposed partnership. I detailed the technical specifications of our security system, the implementation timeline, the financial projections, and the potential for future expansion. When I finished 30 minutes later, the room remained silent for several moments. I stood calmly, resisting the urge to fill the silence. Finally, Mr. Tanaka spoke. "Your proposal is comprehensive. Your company's technology is impressive. But many firms have good technology." I nodded, waiting for the question I knew was coming. Why should Tanaka Corporation choose Reynolds Technologies as a partner for this critical security component? What makes your company different? This was the moment I had prepared for most carefully. I removed Grandpa's fountain pen from my pocket and held it up for them to see. This pen belonged to my grandfather, who founded our company. He used it to sign every important contract in our history. I set it on the table before continuing. At Reynolds, we understand that technology is ultimately about trust. When consumers invite our security systems into their homes through your devices, they are trusting both our companies to protect their most personal spaces and information. I continued, explaining our company's perfect record for data protection, our rapid response to emerging threats, and our philosophy of continuous improvement. We don't see this as a one-time transaction, but as the beginning of a relationship that will grow and evolve as technology and security challenges change. We are offering not just our current solutions, but our commitment to innovate alongside Tanaka for years to come. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly, nods of approval, thoughtful expressions replacing neutral masks. The questions that followed were engaged and forward-looking, focusing on possibilities rather than obstacles. By the time we broke for lunch, I knew we were close to securing the deal. Mr. Yamamoto confirmed my impression when he pulled me aside before we returned to the boardroom. "The team is impressed, Reynolds-san. There are still details to finalize, but I believe we will reach an agreement today." The afternoon session focused on fine-tuning the contract terms. By 5 o'clock, we had a preliminary agreement, pending final approval from both companies' boards. Mr. Tanaka himself invited me to a celebratory dinner with the executive team. "It is not our practice to celebrate before contracts are signed," he explained as we enjoyed an elaborate multi-course meal at an exclusive restaurant. "But in this case, we are confident in our new partnership." I returned to my hotel room just after 11, exhausted but elated. The contract wasn't officially signed, but we had cleared every major hurdle. I kicked off my painful formal shoes and was about to call Grandpa with the good news when my phone rang, displaying my mother's number. "Mom?" I answered, surprised she was calling so late. "It's midnight there. Is everything okay?" Her voice came through breathless and panicked. "Mackenzie, you need to come home right away. Grandpa's had a heart attack. It's serious." The world seemed to tilt beneath me as all the joy from the successful negotiations drained away in an instant. "What? When? Is he?" I couldn't bring myself to finish the question. "He's at Memorial Hospital. The doctors are doing everything they can, but—" Her voice broke. "You need to get on the first flight home. The company needs leadership right now, and with you as CFO and me as his daughter, we need to make decisions together. I'll book a flight right now, I promised, already pulling up the airline app on my phone. Have you notified the board?" "I've called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning," she said. "In the meantime, I need you to email me the power of attorney documents from the company server. With Grandpa incapacitated, we need to make sure someone can sign off on operational decisions." Something in her tone made me pause. Power of attorney? Wouldn't that automatically go to Jerry as COO per the emergency succession plan? "This is different," she insisted. "This is family. Just send me the documents, Mackenzie. I'm trying to hold everything together here while you've been whining and dining in Tokyo." The subtle accusation stung, but I was too worried about Grandpa to argue. "I'll look for the documents after I book my flight." "Have the doctors said anything about his prognosis?" "It doesn't look good," she replied, her voice suddenly flat. "Just hurry home." As I hung up, a cold knot of fear settled in my stomach, fear for Grandpa, fear for the company's stability, and underneath it all, a strange uneasiness about my mother's call that I couldn't quite place. After booking the earliest available flight, a 7 a.m. departure that would get me home via a connection in Los Angeles, I tried calling the hospital directly. My hands shook as I dialed the number for Memorial Hospital's cardiac unit. "I'm calling about Harold Reynolds," I explained to the nurse who answered. "He was admitted for a heart attack. I'm his granddaughter, calling from overseas." A brief pause followed. "I'm sorry, but we don't have any patient by that name in our system." "There must be some mistake," I insisted. "Harold Reynolds, 75 years old. My mother said he was admitted tonight." "Let me check our emergency admissions for the past 24 hours, the nurse offered. After another pause, "I'm not showing any Harold Reynolds. Is it possible he's at another hospital?" A flicker of confusion turned into a spark of suspicion. Memorial was the only hospital Grandpa ever used. His late wife had been on their board, and his cardiologist had practiced there for 30 years. "Thank you," I said, ending the call and immediately dialing Grandpa's home number. No answer. I tried his cell phone. Straight to voicemail. The knot in my stomach tightened. Next, I called Linda Spencer, Grandpa's executive assistant for the past decade. "Mackenzie, how's Tokyo?" She answered cheerfully. "Linda, when did you last see Grandpa?" I asked, skipping any pleasantries. "About 3 hours ago," she replied, her tone shifting to concern. "He left the office after his last meeting." "Is something wrong?" "My mother just called saying he had a heart attack and is in the hospital, but Memorial has no record of him." "That's strange," Linda said slowly. "He seemed fine when he left. He was planning to review the quarterly projections at home tonight and mentioned he was looking forward to hearing how your presentation went." My suspicion was growing stronger. "Has my mother been in the office today?" "Yes, she came by around 4 and spent some time in Harold's office. Said she was looking for some documents he'd promised her." "Did anyone see what she was doing in there?" "Not that I know of," Linda replied. "Mackenzie, what's going on?" "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Could you do me a favor? Can you call Mrs. Peterson next door to Grandpa's house and ask her to check on him? Say you've been trying to reach him about an urgent work matter." While waiting for Linda to call back, I searched my emails for the emergency succession plan we'd updated just 6 months ago. The document clearly stated that in the event of the CEO's temporary incapacitation, the Chief Operating Officer would assume operational control, with major decisions requiring board approval. There was no provision for family members to receive power of attorney unless specifically designated, which I knew Grandpa hadn't done. My mother's request suddenly seemed not just unusual, but suspicious. My phone rang again. Linda. Mrs. Peterson just called me back, she reported. She went over and found Harold in his study, perfectly fine. He was surprised to hear we were concerned. He says his phone died and he was so absorbed in work that he didn't notice. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by confusion and anger. So he's not sick at all? No heart attack? Not according to Mrs. Peterson. He even joked that he felt better than he had in years. Thank you, Linda. Please don't mention this to anyone else yet, especially my mother. I need to figure out what's happening. I hung up and immediately called my mother back, my hands now steady with purpose rather than shaking with fear. Mom, I just spoke to the hospital. They have no record of Grandpa being admitted. A beat of silence. You must have called the wrong hospital. I called Memorial. You specifically said he was at Memorial. I meant County General. That's where the ambulance took him. Really? Because I just had someone check his house and he's there working in his study. Perfectly healthy. Another, longer silence. Then, there must be some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding is why you'd lie about Grandpa having a heart attack, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. What's going on, Mom? I received a call saying he was in distress, she said defensively. I was concerned. Apparently it was a false alarm. And the emergency board meeting you called? The power of attorney documents you wanted. Precautionary measures, she snapped. Which we obviously don't need now. I was trying to be responsible, Mackenzie. Someone needs to think about the company's continuity. That's what our succession plan is for, I reminded her. Which you would know if you bothered to read the governance documents before joining the board. Don't take that tone with me, she warned. I'm still your mother. And Grandpa is still CEO, not on his deathbed. I'm going to call and tell him you're spreading rumors about his health. Wait. The panic in her voice was unmistakable now. Don't call him yet. Let me explain in person when you get home. There are things happening with the company you don't understand. What things? I can't discuss it over the phone. Just come home, and we'll sort everything out. I ended the call and immediately dialed Grandpa's number again. This time he answered on the second ring. Mackenzie, I was just about to call you. How did the presentation go? The familiar warmth of his voice nearly brought tears to my eyes. It went really well. We have preliminary approval. But Grandpa, something strange is happening. I explained my mother's call and her claims about his health. A heart attack, he exclaimed. I've never felt better. And I certainly haven't authorized any emergency board meeting. She also asked me to send her power of attorney documents, I added. She said with you incapacitated, she needed to make decisions for the company. His voice turned cold. Did you send anything? No. It didn't align with our succession plan, and then when the hospital had no record of you. You were right to be suspicious, he said grimly. Mackenzie, your mother came to me last week asking for a loan to cover some unexpected expenses. When I declined, she became very upset, saying I've never supported her financially the way I should have. Do you think this is just about money? I asked. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm going to find out. In the meantime, when is your flight home? I hesitated. I booked a 7 a.m. flight, but Grandpa, the contract with Tanaka. We're so close. If I leave now. Stay, he decided after a moment. Finish what you started. I'll handle your mother and ensure the board knows I'm in perfect health. We can't let her interfere with this opportunity. Are you sure? Absolutely. I'll call Jerry and our legal team right away. Just focus on finalizing that contract. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, mind racing. What was my mother planning? Was this just another of her desperate attempts to get money, or something more sinister? I opened my laptop and logged into the company server remotely, checking the access logs. My mother's credentials had been used to access several folders she rarely viewed: financial projections, client contracts, and most alarmingly, the folder containing our proprietary security algorithms. A chill ran through me as I realized this might be about much more than an imaginary health crisis or a power grab. if she was accessing our intellectual property. I needed more information. I called Rachel Kim, our head of IT security. Rachel, I need you to quietly monitor all of my mother's system access for the next 24 hours. Don't restrict anything, just log what she's viewing and especially what she's downloading or sending externally. Is everything okay? Rachel asked cautiously. I'm not sure, I admitted. But until I am, this stays between us. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with an email notification from Hiroshi Yamamoto. Reynolds-san, our board has unanimously approved the partnership. We can proceed with contract finalization tomorrow. This is excellent news for both our companies. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a moment of pure triumph. Instead, I found myself torn between professional achievement and personal betrayal, wondering what new challenges would emerge before the contract could be signed. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night digging deeper into my mother's recent activities within the company, uncovering a pattern that turned my concern into alarm. Over the past month, she had gradually escalated her access to sensitive company information, first reviewing financial reports, reasonable for a board member, then examining client contracts, and finally, most disturbingly, downloading technical specifications for our security products. None of this was strictly outside her authorized access as a board member, but the pattern and timing were suspicious. At 3 a.m., Rachel called me. You told me to monitor your mother's system access, she began without preamble. She's online right now, downloading the complete documentation for the Tanaka proposal. My throat tightened. Can you see where she's accessing from? Her home IP address. And Mackenzie. Rachel hesitated. She's also uploading files to an external email account we don't have in our system. Can you see what's being sent? It looks like your presentation materials and our proprietary integration specifications, essentially everything Tanaka would need to understand how our technology works. The pieces were falling into place, each one more damning than the last. Rachel, I need you to do something that stays absolutely confidential. Can you access my mother's company email without leaving a trace? It's against policy, she said carefully, but given the circumstances, yes, I can set up a silent mirror of her inbox for the next 24 hours. As IT security director, I have authorization for potential breach investigations. Do it, I instructed. And Rachel? Thank you. By 5 a.m., I had my smoking gun and email exchange between my mother and Victor Chin, CEO of Meridian Systems, our biggest competitor. As discussed, attached are the key components of Reynolds' security architecture my mother had written just hours earlier. Meridian should be able to develop a competing solution before the Tanaka deal is finalized if you move quickly. Per our agreement, I expect the consulting position and equity stake to be formalized once I have control of Reynolds Technologies. The response from Chin was equally incriminating. Impressive materials. Our team confirms these specifications would allow us to replicate the core functionality. We'll move forward with the board seat and 5% equity stake as discussed, contingent on you securing controlling interest in Reynolds. The $500,000 consulting retainer has been transferred to the offshore account you provided. I felt physically ill. My mother wasn't just trying to take control of the company, she was selling our intellectual property to a competitor in exchange for personal gain. The fake heart attack story had been designed to get me on a plane home, away from the Tanaka negotiations, while she implemented whatever plan she had to seize control. I called Grandpa immediately, despite the early hour. I found evidence that Mom is working with Meridian Systems, I told him after apologizing for the 2 p.m. wake-up call. She's sending them our proprietary information in exchange for money and a position with their company. His silence spoke volumes. Grandpa? I'm here, he said finally, his voice heavy. I just never thought she would go this far. There's more, I continued reluctantly. Based on what I'm seeing, she's been planning this for weeks. The emergency board meeting she called isn't about your health at all. It's to propose a restructuring of the company leadership. How do you know this? She drafted the proposal 3 weeks ago. It suggests that as you approach retirement, the company needs fresh vision and family leadership. She's positioning herself as interim CEO with broad powers to evaluate and restructure the executive team. She doesn't have the votes, Grandpa said, but he sounded unsure. She's been meeting individually with board members, I told him. Specifically targeting the 3 you appointed last year who don't know the company history. From their responses to her emails, she's convinced at least 2 of them to support her. This is a nightmare, Grandpa muttered. What about the Tanaka contract? We have preliminary approval. I'm scheduled to finalize details today, with signing tomorrow. That's something, at least. He took a deep breath. Mackenzie, I need to confront your mother and inform the board about what's happening. Can you send me the evidence you've found? Already compiling it, I assured him. But Grandpa, be careful. She's desperate and has a lot to lose now. I've been too soft on her for too long, he said, regret evident in his voice. It's time I held her accountable. After sending Grandpa the documentation, I tried to prepare for my meeting with Tanaka, but my focus was shattered. Everything I'd worked for was at risk. Not just the contract, but the company itself and my relationship with my only remaining family. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Your mother just arrived at the office demanding to see Harold. She looks furious. He's asked security to keep her in the reception area until the police arrive. Police? My stomach dropped. Grandpa was taking this even more seriously than I'd anticipated. Then another message, this one from our VP of Sales. Rumors spreading that Harold is seriously ill and company leadership in question. Tanaka representatives called asking for confirmation of our stability. What's happening? The situation was spiraling. If Tanaka got cold feet because of perceived instability at Reynolds, months of work would be wasted. I had to act quickly. I called Mr. Yamamoto directly. Reynolds-san, he answered formally. We were just discussing some concerning information we received about your company. Mr. Yamamoto, I want to address this directly, I said. Reynolds Technologies is experiencing an attempted corporate governance issue that is being resolved as we speak. My grandfather Harold Reynolds is in excellent health and remains CEO. The rumors you've heard were fabricated by a board member who is now being removed for corporate espionage. This is a serious accusation, he replied cautiously. It is, and I wouldn't make it without evidence, I assured him. The situation will be fully resolved before our contract signing. Reynolds Technologies' leadership, financial stability, and ability to fulfill our commitments remain absolutely unchanged. I appreciate your transparency, he said after a thoughtful pause. However, Tanaka Corporation must be certain of our partner's stability. Perhaps we should postpone our final meetings until your company has resolved these internal matters. This was exactly what I'd feared, and possibly exactly what my mother had hoped for. A delay now could derail the entire partnership. Mr. Yamamoto, may I suggest an alternative? I invite you to join a video conference with my grandfather and our executive team in 1 hour. You can see for yourself that he is well and firmly in control of the company, and he can address any concerns you have directly. Another pause. That would be acceptable. 1 hour. I immediately messaged Grandpa about the video conference, then called our executive team to brief them on both the situation with my mother and the critical importance of the upcoming call with Tanaka. The next hour was chaos. While I prepared for the video conference from my hotel room, updates flooded in from headquarters. My mother had been escorted from the building, screaming about betrayal and threatening legal action. 2 board members had called asking what was happening after receiving alarming emails from her about Grandpa's health and my reckless actions in Tokyo. Our legal team was documenting the evidence of intellectual property theft and preparing emergency board resolutions to remove my mother from the board. Most distressingly, our stock had dropped 7% in early trading as rumors of leadership turmoil leaked to the market. When the video conference began, I was relieved to see Grandpa looking composed and authoritative in his office, flanked by our COO and legal counsel. The executive team joined from the conference room. Mr. Yamamoto, gentleman of Tanaka Corporation, Grandpa began, his voice strong. Thank you for allowing us to address your concerns directly. As you can see, reports of my illness were greatly exaggerated. He went on to explain the situation with remarkable candor, acknowledging the attempted corporate espionage without directly naming my mother. A board member's inappropriate actions have been discovered and are being addressed through proper legal channels, he stated. This person has been removed from company premises and will be formally removed from the board at an emergency meeting this afternoon. Their access to company systems has been terminated. Mr. Yamamoto listened intently before responding. Reynolds-san, in Japan, we have a saying, a tree with strong roots need not fear the storm. It seems your company has strong roots. Indeed we do, Grandpa agreed. Reynolds Technologies has weathered challenges before and emerged stronger. I give you my personal assurance that this situation will not affect our ability to fulfill our commitments to Tanaka Corporation. And the technology specifications provided in your proposal, they remain proprietary and secure? This question came from Tanaka's legal counsel. I stepped in. We have confirmed that while attempts were made to compromise our intellectual property, our security team intercepted these attempts. The core architecture remains secure, and we've implemented additional protections. This wasn't entirely accurate. My mother had successfully sent some documentation to Meridian, but our legal team was already preparing cease and desist orders and injunctions to prevent Meridian from using the information. The call concluded with cautious optimism, our meeting to finalize contract details rescheduled for that afternoon rather than canceled entirely. It wasn't a complete victory, but it gave us time to stabilize the situation. As the Tanaka executive signed off, Grandpa asked me to stay on the line. Your mother has been taken into custody, he said once we were alone. The police are questioning her now about the corporate espionage and wire fraud related to the offshore account she established. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sadness. I never thought it would come to this. Neither did I, he admitted. I've spent years making excuses for her behavior, trying to protect her from consequences. That ends today. What happens now? We move forward, he said firmly. I'll handle things here, the board, the legal issues, the public relations. You focus on closing that contract with Tanaka. It's more important than ever now. As I hung up, I felt the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on my shoulders. In less than 24 hours, I had gone from celebrating a professional triumph to uncovering a family betrayal that threatened everything we had built. The Tanaka contract wasn't just a business opportunity anymore, it was a lifeline for a company suddenly fighting for its reputation and future. Despite Grandpa's assurances that he would handle the situation at headquarters, new complications arose throughout the day. My mother had been released on bail after just 3 hours in police custody, and she was wasting no time in escalating her counterattack. Linda called while I was reviewing contract revisions in preparation for my afternoon meeting with Tanaka. Your mother is calling every board member, she reported. She's claiming Harold is mentally unfit and that you've manipulated him into pressing false charges against her. She's demanding the emergency board meeting proceed as scheduled to protect the company from Harold's declining judgment. How are board members responding? I asked, massaging my temple where a stress headache was forming. Most are waiting to hear Harold's side, but Martin and Diane seemed receptive to her claims. They've known your mother socially for years. Martin and Diane were 2 of our newest board members. Wealthy investors with limited understanding of the company's operations, but significant voting power. Has Grandpa spoken with them directly? He's trying, but they're suddenly unavailable, Linda said, frustration evident in her voice. And there's more. Your mother has apparently hired Patricia Coleman as her attorney. My stomach dropped. Patricia Coleman was one of the most aggressive corporate attorneys in the state, known for scorched earth tactics and media manipulation. They've already issued a press statement, Linda continued. It doesn't name Reynolds directly due to potential libel issues, but it references a family-owned technology firm where an aging founder is being manipulated by younger executives seeking to consolidate power. That's absurd, I protested. We have evidence of her corporate espionage. Evidence that hasn't been made public yet, Linda pointed out. In the meantime, her narrative is gaining traction. 2 tech blogs have already published stories about leadership turmoil at Reynolds. The situation was deteriorating faster than I had anticipated. I glanced at the clock, 3 hours until my rescheduled meeting with Tanaka. Linda, I need you to compile every piece of documentation showing Grandpa's mental acuity over the past 6 months. Board meeting minutes where he led complex discussions, strategic planning documents with his notes, recordings of his quarterly investor briefings, everything. I'll start immediately. And please ask Jerry to personally call every board member to counter whatever narrative my mother is spinning. After hanging up, I received a text from Rachel. M's account tried to access system again using secondary credentials we didn't know about. Blocked now. Also found evidence she downloaded client list and financial projections last week. The scope of my mother's betrayal was still expanding. This wasn't a spontaneous act of desperation. She had been methodically gathering company information and planning this coup for weeks, possibly months. My phone rang again, unknown number. Mackenzie Reynolds, I answered cautiously. Ms. Reynolds, this is Patricia Coleman representing Amanda Reynolds in a dispute with Reynolds Technologies. The attorney's voice was precise and cold. I'm calling to offer you an opportunity to resolve this situation before it further damages both the company and your family relationships. I wasn't aware there was a situation to resolve, I replied, matching her formal tone. The company has documented evidence of corporate espionage and attempted intellectual property theft. My client characterizes those actions as legitimate business research in her capacity as a board member, Coleman countered smoothly. What we have is a family disagreement that has been unnecessarily escalated to law enforcement. Selling proprietary technology to competitors goes well beyond a family disagreement, I pointed out. Allegations that will be difficult to prove, especially given Harold Reynolds' increasingly erratic behavior and your own conflict of interest as you attempt to position yourself as his successor. My grip tightened on the phone. What exactly are you proposing? My client is willing to resign from the board and sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement in exchange for a fair financial settlement reflecting her years of contribution to the family business and her board service. Her contribution. I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. She's never worked a day at Reynolds Technologies. She's Harold Reynolds' only child, Coleman replied coolly. The company exists in large part due to sacrifices she made as a single mother while Harold built his business. The courts tend to recognize such contributions in family business disputes. This sounds like extortion. This is an attempt to avoid prolonged litigation that would damage everyone involved. My client is seeking $15 million and ongoing royalties from the Tanaka contract you're currently negotiating. The figure was staggering, more than 3 times the value of the contract itself. That's not going to happen, I said firmly. But I'll relay your offer to our legal team. I suggest you consider it carefully, Coleman advised. We're prepared to file for an emergency injunction preventing Reynolds Technologies from entering into any new contracts until the leadership dispute is resolved. I imagine your Japanese partners would find that concerning. After ending the call, I immediately phoned our chief legal officer, who confirmed my suspicions. While the injunction was unlikely to succeed on its merits, simply filing it could spook Tanaka enough to delay or cancel our contract. We could file our own preemptive motions, he suggested, but that turns this into a public legal battle that might hurt the company regardless of the outcome. The walls were closing in. I had just 2 hours before meeting with Tanaka, who were already nervous about our stability. My mother and her attorney were threatening legal action that could derail the contract entirely. And somewhere in the background, Meridian Systems was likely using our stolen intellectual property to develop a competing product. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Reynolds Technologies stock down 12% amid reports of leadership struggle. The situation had become public enough to affect our stock price, which would only add to Tanaka's concerns about our stability. I was still processing this when an email arrived from Mr. Yamamoto. In light of emerging reports about Reynolds Technologies, Tanaka Corporation requests that all current company officers with signing authority attend today's contract discussion. We must ensure any agreement made has proper organizational backing. They were clearly aware of the developing situation and covering their bases legally. I couldn't blame them, but this new requirement presented a problem. Our corporate bylaws required 2 executive signatures on international contracts of this magnitude, typically the CEO and CFO. With Grandpa in crisis management mode back home, we needed another solution. I called Grandpa to update him on this latest development. "I can't leave now," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "Your mother's attorney has filed for an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. If I'm not here to personally address the board, we could lose control of the company entirely." "What about Jerry?" I suggested. "As COO, he is signing authority for operational contracts. International partnerships require my signature or a board resolution designating an alternate," Grandpa reminded me. And with the board in disarray, we sat in heavy silence for a moment, both recognizing the trap closing around us. My mother had created enough chaos and uncertainty that we couldn't fulfill normal business functions, which only reinforced her narrative of company instability. "There's one solution," Grandpa said finally. "I could sign the paperwork electronically." "Tanaka is old school," I warned. "They expect physical signatures with your lucky fountain pen and all the ceremony that entails. An electronic signature might further signal to them that something is wrong." "Then we need to buy time," he decided. "Tell them I'm flying to Tokyo tomorrow to personally finalize the agreement. That gives us 24 hours to resolve the situation here." It wasn't ideal, but it was our best option. I called Mr. Yamamoto to propose the one-day delay, emphasizing Grandpa's personal commitment to the partnership. "We understand business challenges arise," he replied diplomatically. "However, Tanaka must consider whether these internal issues at Reynolds reflect deeper organizational problems." "They don't," I assured him. "What you're seeing is unfortunately a personal matter being inappropriately elevated to a business issue. By this time tomorrow, it will be fully resolved." I hoped that was true, but as I hung up, another call came in, this one from our VP of Sales. "Mackenzie, Meridian just announced a new security product with features suspiciously similar to what we've been developing for Tanaka. They're claiming they can deliver in half the time we proposed." My blood ran cold. They had already begun using the information my mother provided. "Have they approached Tanaka directly?" "Yes, through a mutual business partner. They're pitching themselves as the stable alternative to Reynolds." The pieces of my mother's plan became crystal clear. She hadn't just been selling company secrets for personal gain. She had deliberately created a leadership crisis timed perfectly with the Tanaka negotiations, giving Meridian an opening to swoop in with a competing offer based on our own technology. It was elegant in its ruthlessness. Even if she failed to gain control of Reynolds Technologies, she would have her lucrative position with Meridian secured by delivering them both our intellectual property and one of our most promising potential clients. As night fell in Tokyo, I found myself alone in my hotel room, surrounded by contract documents that might never be signed and battling a sense of helplessness I'd never experienced in my professional life. Everything I had worked for was unraveling, and the solutions were frustratingly out of reach from 6,000 miles away. My phone rang again. "Grandpa, the board meeting has been moved up," he said without preamble. "Your mother convinced enough members that this is an urgent situation requiring immediate attention. They're convening in 1 hour." "But that's 9 p.m. there," I protested. "That's not even." "It's not standard procedure," he agreed grimly, which is exactly why she pushed for it. "Several of our most supportive board members are traveling and won't be able to participate on such short notice." The strategy was as transparent as it was effective. "Can you delay?" "Not without appearing to confirm her claims that I'm attempting to maintain control inappropriately," he sighed. "Mackenzie, I need you on this call. Your financial expertise and direct knowledge of what's happening with Tanaka are essential." Of course, I agreed, glancing at my watch. The board meeting would happen at 10 a.m. Tokyo time, right when I was supposed to be meeting with Tanaka to buy us more time. "I'll reschedule with Tanaka," I told him, already dreading the further damage this would cause to their confidence in us. "No," Grandpa said firmly. "You can't risk the Tanaka relationship. We'll have to manage both simultaneously." As I hung up, the full weight of the crisis hit me. In just a few hours, I would be fighting for both the company's most important new contract and its very governance structure, simultaneously, from a hotel room on the other side of the world. The night ahead promised to be the most challenging of my professional life, with my family legacy and future hanging in the balance. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. I commandeered a small conference room from the hotel business center, setting up my laptop for the board meeting while keeping my tablet ready for any urgent communications from Tanaka. The wall clock showed 9:30 a.m. Tokyo time, 30 minutes until both crucial meetings began. Linda had sent over the materials I'd requested documenting Grandpa's mental acuity, along with a damning timeline of my mother's recent activities, her increased access to sensitive documents, meetings with Meridian executives disguised as charity lunches, and suspicious financial transactions matching the timeline of her information theft. Our legal team had prepared a comprehensive presentation on the corporate espionage evidence, including the email exchanges with Meridian and forensic analysis of the data transfers. They had also drafted emergency resolutions to remove my mother from the board and initiate legal proceedings against both her and Meridian systems. The most powerful evidence, however, had arrived just 20 minutes earlier, a signed affidavit from Meridian's former VP of Product Development, who had resigned that morning and reached out to Grandpa. He confirmed that Amanda Reynolds had provided proprietary Reynolds technology to Meridian in exchange for financial compensation and a promised executive position. As I reviewed these materials, I received a text from Mr. Yamamoto. "We are disappointed about the delay, but will meet as scheduled to discuss next steps. However, we must inform you that we have received an interesting proposal from Meridian Systems that warrants consideration." Just as I feared, Meridian was making their move, using our own technology and the chaos my mother had created to position themselves as the superior option. At precisely 10 a.m., both meetings began. On my laptop screen, the Reynolds Technologies board members appeared one by one in a grid of video feeds. My mother sat in what appeared to be her attorney's office, her expression a practiced mask of concern. Grandpa joined from his office at headquarters, flanked by our legal counsel. On my tablet, a text notification from Tanaka's assistant confirmed they were gathering in their conference room and would call shortly to discuss partnership options. "I call this emergency meeting of the Reynolds Technologies board to order," began Martin Fisher, who as lead independent director was chairing the session. "We're here to address serious concerns about company leadership and governance raised by board member Amanda Reynolds." My mother's attorney spoke first, laying out a narrative so distorted it was almost unrecognizable. Harold Reynolds, suffering from declining cognitive function, had become paranoid and controlling, lashing out at his daughter when she expressed valid concerns about succession planning. I, as his favored grandchild, was exploiting his condition to consolidate power, even going so far as to file false criminal complaints against my mother to eliminate her from succession consideration. "Ms. Reynolds Sr. has served faithfully on this board for years," the attorney concluded. "Her only crime is caring enough about the company's future to question whether her father remains capable of leading it. For this, she has been subjected to police detention and public humiliation orchestrated by her own daughter." Several board members looked genuinely troubled by this characterization. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, completing the performance. My tablet chimed. The Tanaka call was coming in. I quickly muted the board meeting and accepted the video call on my tablet. "Reynolds-san," Mr. Yamamoto greeted me formally. "Thank you for making time for us despite your company's situation." "The situation is being resolved as we speak," I assured him, angling my tablet so they couldn't see the board meeting on my laptop. "We remain fully committed to our partnership. We have concerns about entering into a major agreement during a period of leadership uncertainty," Tanaka's legal counsel interjected. "Particularly when another vendor is offering similar technology with apparently more stable governance." I needed to respond, but on my laptop screen, Martin was calling for a vote on my mother's first resolution to temporarily remove Grandpa as CEO pending a comprehensive evaluation of his capacity. "Excuse me for one moment," I told the Tanaka executives, muting that call and unmuting the board meeting. "Before we vote," I interrupted urgently, "the board should review critical new evidence regarding the actual circumstances behind this emergency meeting." Ms. Reynolds Jr. was given notice of this meeting as a courtesy due to her position as CFO. My mother's attorney objected. She is not here as a voting board member and has no standing to present evidence. On the contrary, our corporate counsel countered, as an officer of the company with direct knowledge of matters before the board, Ms. Reynolds not only has standing, but a fiduciary duty to present relevant information. Martin reluctantly allowed me to proceed. I shared my screen and methodically presented the evidence, the timeline of my mother's activities, the forensic analysis of her data theft, her communications with Meridian, and finally, the whistleblower's affidavit. What you're witnessing isn't a good faith concern about leadership, I concluded. It's a coordinated attempt at corporate espionage and hostile takeover. While I've been in Tokyo working to secure a transformative partnership for Reynolds, my mother has been selling our proprietary technology to Meridian Systems and creating a leadership crisis timed specifically to undermine our negotiations with Tanaka Corporation. The board members' expressions shifted from concern to shock as they absorbed the evidence. My mother's facade of injured innocence crumbled, replaced by undisguised fury. "This is a fabrication," she sputtered. "Harold and Mackenzie are conspiring to cut me out of what should rightfully be mine." "Rightfully yours?" Grandpa repeated quietly. "Amanda, you've never written a line of code, never developed a product, never served a customer. What exactly do you think you're entitled to?" "I'm your daughter," she shouted, abandoning all pretense of composure. "I shouldn't have had to work for what should have been given to me." Her outburst hung in the stunned silence that followed, a damning admission of her true motivations. Martin cleared his throat uncomfortably. "In light of this, concerning evidence, I move that we table Ms. Reynolds Sr.'s resolutions and instead consider the emergency measures proposed by legal counsel." My tablet was flashing with messages from Tanaka. I muted the board call again and returned to the Tanaka meeting. "I apologize for the interruption," I said smoothly. "As I mentioned, we're resolving our internal matters as we speak." "We understand you are in a difficult position," Mr. Yamamoto said, his expression unreadable. "However, given the uncertainty and the competing offer from Meridian Systems, we must consider all options." An idea struck me, bold and potentially risky, but possibly our only chance to save both the company and the Tanaka partnership. "Mr. Yamamoto, would you and your team be willing to join a portion of our board meeting? I believe it would address your concerns about our stability while also providing valuable insight into the situation with Meridian." He conferred briefly with his colleagues before nodding. "We would be willing to observe for a short time." I quickly arranged to add the Tanaka executives to the board call, muting them so they could observe without participating. Then I messaged Grandpa privately to explain what I was doing. When I returned to the board meeting, the directors had already voted unanimously to temporarily suspend my mother's board membership pending a formal removal process. She was now shouting at her attorney, who was trying unsuccessfully to calm her. "Before we proceed further," I announced, "I've invited the executives from Tanaka Corporation to observe a portion of our meeting. They're understandably concerned about our stability as a potential partner, especially since Meridian Systems has approached them with a competing offer, using technology suspiciously similar to our proprietary systems." This revelation sharpened the board's focus. The international partnership had been discussed in previous meetings, and everyone understood its strategic importance. "Tanaka representatives, thank you for joining us," Grandpa addressed the Japanese executives directly. "As you can see, Reynolds Technologies has identified an attempt at corporate espionage and is taking decisive action to address it. Far from being unstable, we are demonstrating proper governance and protection of our intellectual property, the very technology you're considering licensing from us." Mr. Yamamoto's face remained impassive, but I could see the other Tanaka executives exchanging thoughtful glances. Our legal counsel continued, outlining the emergency measures being implemented. My mother's immediate removal from company premises and systems, a forensic audit of all data she had accessed, cease and desist orders against Meridian, and preparations for litigation against both parties. Furthermore, Grandpa added, to ensure continuity and demonstrate our commitment to proper governance, I am proposing an acceleration of our existing succession plan. He turned to face the camera directly. I nominate Mackenzie Reynolds to assume the role of Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately, with myself transitioning to Executive Chairman. The proposal took me completely by surprise. We had discussed succession planning, but not with this timeline. Before I could process the implications, Martin called for a vote on the combined resolutions. One by one, the board members voted in favor, including those who had earlier seemed sympathetic to my mother's claims. The evidence was simply too overwhelming to ignore. The resolutions pass unanimously, Martin announced. Amanda Reynolds is suspended from the board pending formal removal proceedings. Mackenzie Reynolds is appointed Chief Executive Officer, with Harold Reynolds assuming the role of Executive Chairman. My mother's video feed abruptly disappeared as her attorney apparently ended their connection. Mr. Yamamoto, Grandpa addressed the Tanaka executives. As you can see, Reynolds Technologies has addressed this governance challenge decisively. We now have clear, unified leadership and are taking appropriate legal measures to protect our intellectual property, the same proprietary technology we're offering to Tanaka Corporation as part of our partnership. Mr. Yamamoto spoke for the first time since joining the board call. We have observed with interest. It appears Reynolds Technologies has strong governance mechanisms and leadership succession capabilities. He paused before continuing. We would like to proceed with our scheduled contract discussions, now with the newly appointed CEO. The board meeting concluded shortly thereafter, with arrangements made for an emergency press release announcing the leadership transition and legal actions against my mother and Meridian Systems. As the directors signed off, congratulating me on my appointment, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. I was now CEO of Reynolds Technologies. The Tanaka executives remained on the call, transitioning seamlessly into our contract discussion. With the leadership question settled and the nature of Meridian's competing offer exposed as based on stolen technology, the negotiations proceeded smoothly. 2 hours later, I sat alone in the hotel conference room, staring at the signed contract on the table before me. Using Grandpa's lucky fountain pen, which I had brought to Tokyo specifically for this moment, I had signed my first major agreement as CEO, a $4.2 million partnership with Tanaka Corporation, with potential to grow to over $20 million in the next 3 years. My phone rang. Grandpa. Congratulations, CEO, he said warmly. How does it feel? Overwhelming, I admitted. I wasn't expecting this to happen today or like this. It wasn't how I planned to announce it either, he chuckled. But crisis has a way of accelerating necessary changes. The truth is, you've been ready for this role for longer than I've been ready to let go. What about Mom? I asked, the victory feeling hollow when I considered the family wreckage. She's gone underground for now. Her attorney is trying to negotiate immunity in exchange for testimony against Meridian, but our legal team doesn't think she has much leverage. He sighed heavily. I've spent decades trying to protect her from consequences, Mackenzie. It hasn't helped her, and it nearly destroyed our company. Do you think she'll ever understand what she's done? I don't know, he admitted. But that's not your burden to carry anymore. You have a company to run now. As we said goodbye, I looked out the hotel window at the Tokyo skyline. In just 48 hours, everything had changed. I had come to Tokyo as CFO on an important business trip and would return as CEO having navigated a crisis that threatened the company's very existence. The path forward wouldn't be easy. We faced litigation against my mother and Meridian, rebuilding trust with shareholders after the public spectacle, and implementing the Tanaka partnership while managing a leadership transition. But for the first time since receiving that late-night call about Grandpa's fabricated heart attack, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. The company had withstood the storm, emerging stronger and more focused under new leadership. As I packed the signed contract into my briefcase, my phone lit up with a news alert. Reynolds Technologies announces CEO transition and legal action against corporate espionage. The story was public now. There was no going back. Only moving forward into a future I hadn't expected but was now mine to shape. The 14-hour flight from Tokyo to San Francisco gave me plenty of time to reflect on the whirlwind events of the past 72 hours. I had left the United States as CFO on an important business trip and was returning as CEO with both a transformative contract and a family crisis that had made headlines in the business press. My tablet contained dozens of emails from colleagues, board members, and journalists, all reacting to the press release about my appointment and the legal actions against my mother and Meridian Systems. Our stock had initially dropped further on news of the leadership change and litigation, but had rebounded to pre-crisis levels after analysts digested the full story and the Tanaka partnership announcement. The flight attendant's voice announcing our initial descent into San Francisco pulled me from my thoughts. After clearing customs, I found Jerry waiting for me at arrivals. "Welcome home, CO," he greeted me with a warm handshake. "How was the flight?" "Long," I admitted. "Any updates I should know about before we reach the office?" His expression turned serious as we walked toward the parking garage. "Your mother's attorney has been calling nonstop, trying to negotiate some kind of settlement. They're threatening a countersuit alleging wrongful termination and emotional distress." I had expected this. "What does our legal team say?" "They're confident our evidence is solid. The whistleblower from Meridian has provided additional documentation showing your mother's involvement in the technology transfer." He paused before adding, "There's also the matter of the offshore account. The $500,000 payment from Meridian has been traced and documented." The elevator doors closed, giving us a moment of privacy. "And how is Grandpa handling all this?" Jerry's expression softened. "It's been tough on him. You know how much he's protected her over the years. But he's fully committed to seeing this through, both the legal proceedings and the leadership transition." The drive to headquarters gave me time to prepare mentally for what awaited me. I had been gone only 5 days, but it felt like returning to a different company. As we pulled into the executive parking area, I noticed the empty space with my mother's name still stenciled on the sign. A small but stark reminder of how quickly things had changed. The executive floor was unusually quiet when we arrived. Linda met us at the elevator, her normally composed demeanor giving way to genuine emotion as she hugged me. "Everyone's waiting in the boardroom," she told me. "Harold wanted to give you a proper welcome." I smoothed my travel-wrinkled suit and took a deep breath. Let's not keep them waiting. The applause that greeted me as I entered the boardroom was unexpected. The entire executive team had gathered, along with key department heads and project managers. Grandpa stood at the head of the table, looking simultaneously proud and relieved. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "our new chief executive officer has returned victorious from Tokyo." The formal welcome and subsequent briefing lasted nearly 2 hours, with each department head updating me on developments during my absence and immediate issues requiring attention. Throughout the meeting, I was acutely aware of sitting in what had been Grandpa's chair just days ago, making decisions that would now ultimately be mine. When the larger group dispersed, leaving just the executive team, the conversation turned to the most difficult topic, my mother. "The district attorney is reviewing the evidence for potential criminal charges," our legal counsel explained. "Corporate espionage, wire fraud, possibly even RICO violations given the coordinated nature of the scheme with Meridian." "What are the chances she'll actually face criminal prosecution?" I asked, struggling to separate my professional responsibilities from my personal feelings. "Significant," he replied frankly. "The evidence is compelling, and the DA's office sees this as an opportunity to send a message about corporate espionage. They're particularly interested in the international angle with the Tanaka negotiations." Grandpa, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. "I've authorized our legal team to offer Amanda a conditional settlement. If she provides complete testimony against Meridian and returns any compensation she received, we'll drop our civil claims and recommend leniency to the prosecutor." "Will she accept?" I asked. "Her attorney indicated she might," Grandpa said. "She's beginning to understand the seriousness of her situation." The meeting concluded with a discussion of immediate priorities. Implementing the Tanaka partnership, reassuring other key clients and investors about the stability of our leadership, and managing the public relations aspects of both the succession and the legal proceedings. As the others filed out, Grandpa asked me to stay behind. "How are you really doing with all this?" he asked once we were alone. The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on the practical aspects of the crisis that I had barely acknowledged its emotional impact. "I'm still processing," I admitted. "Part of me feels like I should have seen the signs earlier, noticed what she was planning before it got this far." "That's not your responsibility," he said firmly. "I've spent decades making excuses for Amanda's behavior, trying to protect her from consequences. That's on me, not you. I keep thinking about what she said during the board meeting about feeling entitled to the company simply because she's your daughter." He nodded sadly. "Amanda has always confused being family with earning trust. She wanted the rewards without the work, the title without the responsibility." He looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, when you were about 16, she accused me of favoring you, just like she did recently. Do you know what I told her?" I shook my head. "I said I didn't favor you, I respected you. There's a difference. Respect is earned through actions and choices. You earned my respect long before you earned the CEO position." His words meant more than he could know, especially given the circumstances of my appointment. "I didn't expect to become CEO like this," I confessed. "Part of me feels like I should have declined, given the appearance of taking advantage of the situation." "Mackenzie," he said gently, "a crisis doesn't create leadership qualities, it reveals them. The board didn't vote for you because of the crisis. They voted for you because of how you handled it. There's a difference there too." As evening fell, I finally made my way to what was now my office, the corner suite that had been Grandpa's for as long as I could remember. Linda had already had my personal items moved from my old office, but the space still felt like his, from the vintage technical manuals on the bookshelf to the framed photos of key moments in the company's history. One photo in particular caught my attention: Grandpa and me at my college graduation, both of us beaming as I held up my finance degree. My mother was noticeably absent, having chosen to vacation in Hawaii rather than attend the ceremony. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Grandpa carrying a small wooden box. "I thought you might want this for your desk," he said, placing it in front of me. Inside was his "Now My Lucky" fountain pen, returned from Tokyo after signing the Tanaka contract. "Thank you," I said, my throat tight with emotion. "I have something else for you too." He handed me a thick folder labeled CEO Transition Plan, Mackenzie Reynolds. "You had this ready before the crisis," I realized, flipping through the detailed documentation. "For about 6 months now," he confirmed. "The board approved it unanimously at our last quarterly meeting. We were planning to announce it at the annual shareholders meeting next month." He smiled wryly. "Your mother was the only board member who didn't know precisely, because I feared something like this might happen. So this wasn't just an emergency reaction to her actions. The timing was accelerated, but the decision was made long ago," he assured me. "You earned this, Mackenzie." "Never doubt that." In the weeks that followed, we settled into new routines. Grandpa embraced his role as executive chairman, focusing on strategic relationships and mentoring me through the transition. I gradually made the CEO position my own, implementing changes I had long envisioned but never had the authority to execute. The legal proceedings against my mother and Meridian Systems progressed. She eventually accepted the settlement offer, providing detailed testimony about Meridian's role in the corporate espionage in exchange for immunity from criminal prosecution. The civil case against Meridian resulted in a substantial settlement and a permanent injunction preventing them from using any technology based on our stolen intellectual property. My mother and I maintained a strained but civil relationship, managed primarily through attorneys and occasional carefully worded emails. The breach of trust was too profound for immediate healing, but I left the door open for genuine reconciliation if she ever chose to walk through it. The Tanaka partnership flourished beyond our initial projections. Our security solutions integrated seamlessly with their consumer products, leading to expanded contracts and new market opportunities. The crisis that had nearly derailed the partnership ultimately strengthened it, as Tanaka's executives gained unique insight into our governance processes and crisis management capabilities. 6 months after my return from Tokyo, I invited Grandpa to dinner at his favorite steakhouse to mark my first half year as CEO. The board approved the quarterly results today, I told him as we enjoyed our meal. Revenue up 17% year-over-year, operating margin improved by 3 points, and customer retention at 98%. Not bad for a rookie CEO, he teased, raising his glass in a toast. I had a good teacher, I replied, clinking my glass against his. As we lingered over coffee, I asked the question that had been on my mind since that turbulent week in Tokyo. Do you regret how things turned out with Mom? He considered the question carefully before answering. I regret not setting better boundaries decades ago. I regret enabling behavior that ultimately led to her downfall. He sighed. But I don't regret protecting the company, even at the cost of our relationship. Some prices, painful as they are, must be paid. I've been thinking about what I learned from all this, I said. About family, business, trust. And what conclusions have you reached? That family isn't an entitlement, it's a relationship that requires the same integrity as any other. That leadership isn't about titles, but about actions. And that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that protect what matters most, even when they hurt. Grandpa nodded thoughtfully. Those are expensive lessons, but valuable ones. Many executives never learn them. I've also learned that success isn't just measured in contracts signed or profits earned, I continued. It's about creating something meaningful, something that outlasts us, a legacy built on integrity rather than entitlement. Now that, he said with evident pride, is the perspective of a true CEO. As we left the restaurant, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The crisis my mother created had been painful and disruptive, but it had also clarified what mattered most, not just in business, but in life. I had protected the company she tried to steal, but more importantly, I had discovered my own capacity for leadership under fire. The path forward wasn't always clear, but the principles that would guide me were integrity over expediency, earned trust over entitled demands, and creating value rather than simply extracting it. These were the true lessons of those chaotic days in Tokyo, lessons that would shape not just my leadership of Reynolds Technologies, but the legacy I hoped to build in the years to come. Have you ever had to stand up against someone close to you to protect what you've built? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of business, betrayal, and resilience resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about navigating the complex intersection of family and business. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the greatest challenges reveal our greatest strengths.